Hello and welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks of Magic the Gathering's history. In this video we're going to look at the last deck from the Guildpact set. It is the last deck because Guildpact and the next set, Dissension, only have three pre-constructed decks each. So yeah. So the last one we're looking at is the Izzet Gizmometry. It's not a word. That's not a word, wizards. You can't just make up words. Which is the blue-red deck because it is representing the Izzet League, which is the blue-red guild from Ravnica. So let's start looking at the deck. So we have 9 creatures, 19 instants, 2 enchantments, 5 sorceries, and 25 land. So very different from what a lot of these kind of pre-constructed decks are really at this time, just because it's really moved into this kind of area now. This kind of the composition is normally about like 2/3 creatures and then 1/3 non-creature spells, which I think is a fine mix for like these pre-constructed decks that are meant to be played sort of out of the box. You have a lot of creatures, so it ensures that stuff is on the board and stuff happens. But red-blue is usually always about spells, and in this deck, obviously, it's a higher focus on instants and mostly instants, but obviously, quite a few sorceries and enchantments there as well. But yeah, obviously, creatures are a lower priority in this deck. But yeah, let's start looking at them. So, one of the rares of the deck is Tybor and Lumia, which is the Izzet Guild champion. 2 colourless, 1 blue and 1 red. Whenever you play a blue, and they're 3/3. Whenever you play a blue spell, target creature gains flying till end of turn. Whenever you play a red spell, they deal 1 damage to every creature without flying. So obviously the interaction here is you play a spell that is both blue and red. You say give Tybor and Lumia flying. You stack that ability first, and then you do the red trigger, which does 1 damage to everything on the ground. Potentially like clear the board of kind of small creatures while keeping Tybor and Lumia safe, and then you've got them to attack with in the air. So yeah, that's kind of the intended use of them, I would say. Kind of a straightforward design. I feel like these days this would be like an uncommon effect. Although having said that, like it is trigger off any spell. It's not like instants or sorceries. It is any spell. So potentially you can get a lot of activations off this in a turn. I think they're okay, especially at 4 mana for a 3/3. Those abilities are actually pretty well costed. The one thing is that it's not like you may. It's like you have to do it. Which can sometimes be a drawback. Like sometimes you don't want to nuke the whole board for like 1 damage, but yeah, it's fine. Okay rare to have, in my opinion. A single Gelectrode, which makes me really sad because I really think there should be at least 2 in this deck, because Gelectrode to me is such an iconic Izzet card. So 1 card, 1 blue, 1 red for a 0/1. Taps to do 1 damage to any target, and whenever you play an instant or sorcery, you untap it. So this little jelly guy is an absolute machine gun in the right deck. Can easily be getting sort of 2-3 activations off him in a turn. Yeah, really good. Really like Gelectrode. Obviously very frail, only having 1 toughness, but yeah, definitely offset by how many times you can get activations off him when you have like a turn that really pops off. Yeah, just my casual play group at the time. We this card was pretty scary. One guy had a red-blue deck which had Gelectrode and a bunch of instant sorcery, so he would just get like 3 of them down, do 3 damage, play a spell, untap them all, do another 3 damage, play another spell, and yeah, just ended games pretty quick. Also ended games pretty quick, thinking about it, was the Wee Dragonauts, which is almost impossible to say without doing a slight Scottish accent. So 1 colourless, 1 blue, 1 red for a 1/3 flyer. Whenever you play an instant or sorcery spell, they get +2/+0 till end of turn. So yeah, this kind of leads into the theme of is it all being about instant and sorcery spells, which I kind of wish had been their guild keyword really, instead of what we got, but we'll see it in the end. So yeah, I think these are perfectly good. Again, for 3 mana, it's +2/+0 is like a really good buff on top of whatever you get for casting the spell. I feel like this is the first first creature that really, because like we see this creature a lot in red now, especially. Whenever you play an instant or sorcery, it gets like a particularly big boost until the end of the turn. The one that springs to mind is Kiln Fiend from Zendikar. I think it's from Zendikar. Yeah, like which gets like +3/+0 whenever you do an instant or sorcery spell, and it was the basis of kind of sort of like these blue-red sort of spell aggro decks where you just play a lot of cheap spells and then just attack with a creature that was far bigger than it had any right to be on turn like 3 or 4. We Dragonauts really like them. Izzet Chronarch, 5 mana for a 2/2. He's doing a lot of the heavy work in this deck. When it comes to play, you get a instant or a sorcery from your graveyard back to your hand. You've got a lot of instants or sorceries, so yeah, he's always going to have a target for his ability, I think. Then we have a single Izzet Guildmage, like all the Guildmages, 2 hybrid mana for a 2/2, and he has 2 abilities. So 2 colours and a blue, copy an instant spell with mana value 2 or less that you control, and you choose new targets. And the red ability is exactly the same, but for sorceries instead. You choose one with mana value 2 or less, and you choose new targets for the copy. So yeah, pretty good. It kind of leans into the guild mechanic, which we'll see in a minute, of copying spells. Which is kind of frustrating because the G-Electrode and We Dragonauts don't care about copies of spells. They only care about the actual, like the hard copy, essentially the cardboard version that you're playing, not the copy of it. So Izzet Guildmage I think is pretty good. His abilities are very interesting. I think it definitely makes him one of the better guild mages, purely because this is really off topic, but. He is part of a kind of a combo that existed at the time because obviously Kamigawa was still around, and it's pretty interesting the interaction between this card and its abilities and Splice, because if you remember from Kamigawa, there were cards that said Splice onto Arcane, which meant you would reveal the card from your hand, play a Splice cost, and you would essentially add that text onto the spell. So there was one combo which was, I think it was like Lava Spike with Desperate Ritual. You would play Lava Spike with a spliced Desperate Ritual onto it. You would then play Desperate Ritual normally to activate the Guild Mage's ability. He would copy the spliced Lava Spike with the ritual, and then the copy would resolve first, which gave you 3 mana from the spliced ritual effect on the spike, and then you would use that just to essentially just go off on that turn. So yeah, really fun card. If only for the the spike ritual combo. Anyway, 2 Petrahydrox, so 3 colors and a color and a hybrid blue-red for a 3/3. When it becomes the target of a spell or ability, it goes back to its owner's hand. That's not very good. So I mean, 4 mana for a 3/3 is, I mean, that's Hill Giant stats, so fine. But that drawback, that text box is almost entirely drawback. It does nothing else. If it had something like it was unblockable, then sure, then we'd be talking. But the fact that you can pay 4 mana and then literally any spell or ability, like not even one your opponent controls, it's like anything, could be one of yours even. It just goes back to your hand and you've essentially just wasted 4 mana. So like really not a great card. Really annoying there's 2 of these actually. Anyway. So that's it. That's all the creatures. So let's move on. So the other rare of the deck is Leyline of Lightning, which is pretty cool. So the ley lines showed up for the first time in Guildpact. So they are enchantments that if you start with them in your opening hand, you just start with them in play, which is pretty cool. It's a pretty fun design, I think. So the Leyline of Lightning is 4 mana if you do cast it, if you're not lucky enough to get it first turn. Whenever you play a spell, you can pay 1, and if you do, it does 1 damage to target player. So yeah, essentially adds a little extra bonus damage to every spell you play. And if you manage to get this down, technically, turn 0, this would be pretty nice, I think, to have this bonus for like throughout the whole game. So yeah, really like Leyline of Lightning, and I think it goes well with this deck in the fact you want to play lots of spells. You don't necessarily want to do combat because you haven't really got that many creatures to do combat with. We Dragonauts is about the best creature you can do with combat, and I guess a bit of Tybor and Lumia. So definitely you want to be burning out your opponent with indirect damage. So yeah, but I think it's good rare to have. Mark of Eviction. This is okay, I think. So 1 blue aura goes on a creature. At the beginning of your upkeep, return the enchanted creature and all auras attached to it back to owner's hand. So this is a very slow, repetitive kind of bounce spell, and it is super annoying to play against because it's so cheap to go down. You put it on an opponent's creature, and they have a turn to use it. Start your turn. They all go back, and then you can put the mark of eviction down on something else. They've got to replay the creature next turn. So the fact it's reusable, I think, is very fun. It is very slow and dirtly bounce, but the fact it never really, you can just keep doing it, is very fun. Right, so now we get into the cards that use the Izzet mechanical, like version 1 Izzet. I really do think the Izzet in Return to Ravnica and the Guilds of Ravnica, like the third time we went back, or the third time we went to Ravnica, are definitely a lot better. Overload and Jumpstart, I think those are much better keywords, but it's early days. It's the awkward adolescent phase for these guilds. They're still trying to find an identity and find keywords that sort of go well. So Pyromatics, let's look at that one first. So 1 colors 1 red for an instant, it does 1 damage to any target, and it has Replicate. So Replicate is when you play this spell, copy it each time you play the Replicate cost, and you can choose new targets for the copies. So it's basically kind of like multi-kicker, I suppose. So if you pay, say, 4 mana on this, you're doing 2 lots of 1 damage. You pay 6 mana, you're doing 3 lots of 1 damage. So it's kind of a very big mana sink. And my issue with these replicate spells is that they just feel very, very expensive for not a lot of gain, because I don't want to sink 6 mana into Pyromatics Day just to do 3 lots of 1 damage. It's very underwhelming, and I know it's a common. I know it can't be too strong, but it just doesn't feel great in my opinion. And like I said before, it creates copies which like Tybor and Lumia or the Gelectrode or the Wee Dragonauts don't care about. In fact, it's not until Strixhaven we see the Magecraft ability that specifically cares about copies of instants or sorceries. So I don't know. It feels like the Izzet were going in sort of 2 different ways in terms of design. You had cards that cared about instant sorceries, which is fine. That's a fine thing to have cards based around. But then you had these replicate spells which create copies, and I don't know. It just feels like a bit of anti-synergy with itself. So Pyromatics is a little underwhelming, I think. I mean, spoiler, I think all these replicate spells are honestly a bit underwhelming. Even at the time, I think I was not excited about these because I just looked at them and said these are very expensive. For example, Thunderheads. So great pun anyway. So 3 mana for an instant that makes a 3/3 flying defender, which then gets exiled at end of turn anyway. You don't even get to keep it. So for 6 mana, you can make 2 of them. Okay, so you can have 2 fairly okay blockers for a turn. Is that the best thing you're doing with 6 mana though? Same with Train of Thought is probably okay. I wish it was an instant. The fact it's sorcery actually really hurts it. So let's go through Train of Thought. So it's 1 colourless and 1 blue to draw a card at sorcery speed, and it has Replicate. So at 4 mana, this is Divination or Council of the Saratami. So you're paying 1 extra. At 6 mana, it's draw 3, which is Concentrate. So you're paying 2 more. And if you put 8 mana into this and draw 4, that's the same as what's the one from us? Opportunity, which is 6 mana. So you're always paying more than you should, I think, for these replicate cards. I feel like it should have been, I don't know, their normal mana value should be sort of 1 less, and the replicate cost should stay the same, I guess, because then it would feel kind of okay costed. If you replicate it once, you draw 2, and that's 3 mana, and then it's on par. I don't know. Just I'd really like to hear other people's opinions on these replicate cards, because they just really don't do anything for me. They just seem very disappointing. And the other one is Vacuum Melt. So 2 colors and 1 blue for a sorcery. Return a creature to owner's hand, and you can replicate it. So this is very expensive unsummon. Considering unsummon is a single blue mana and it does this, Like, would you? I mean, do you want to be spending 6 mana to bounce 2 creatures? I mean, at sorcery speed, it's just not great, is it? Really, very disappointing. And then we have a sort of a bunch of counter magic. So we have 2 convolutes. So this is 2 cards in a blue, counter spell unless it's control place 4. So it's kind of like slightly bigger mana leak. Not as good as mana leak, I don't think, just because it being the one costing the 1 extra, I actually think makes it a little more a little more difficult to use. Mana leak, 2 mana is fine. You can leave open 2 mana, that's fine. But yeah, convolute, not so impressed with it. Frazzle, I think, is just bad. So this is 4 mana, counters a non-blue spell. So it's a hard counter, but at 4 mana and with a condition. Compare this to, say, Counterspell wasn't around in the format, I don't think, but I'd say even compared to Convolute, this is bad. It's just not great, I don't think, Frazzle. I don't know why it's costed so high. Like, if it was, I don't know, if it was 3 mana, maybe, but 4, I think it's just not great. Which is, unfortunately, my feeling on a lot of the cards in this deck, honestly. Which is a shame, because I like blue-red as a combination. And then we have 2 Rune Boggles. So this is basically 4 Spike with a card draw. So 3 mana, counter target spell unless its controller pays 1, and draw a card. It's okay. It draws you a card at least, I suppose. And then a single reroute. So 1 colours and 1 red. Change the target of a activated ability with a single target and draw a card. Kind of niche, but like not awful. And the fact it draws you a card as well is okay. But this maybe wouldn't always be a handy card to hold on to. But I suppose there'd be games where it would be very swingy and kind of have a big effect. Then a couple more bounce options here. So 2 Peel from Reality, 1 colour and 1 blue, return a creature you control and a creature you don't control to owner's hands. That's okay. Obviously this works better with creatures that have enters the battlefield effects, or you can use it to save one of your creatures and bounce an opponent's creature. I'm having a bit of a brain fart. I can't actually think if you'd be allowed to cast this if you can't return a creature you control. I think it's fine. No, because then there wouldn't be valid targets. Maybe, I don't know. Again, put in the comments if I'm getting the rules. Like, can you cast this if only your opponent has creatures? I'm pretty sure you can't, but. And 2 repeals. Repeal is okay, I think. So X and a blue, return a non-land permanent with mana value X or X to its owner's hand and draw a card. So yeah, you're having to probably sink quite a bit of mana into this to make it essentially better than to have it the same effect as what's the boomerang or disperse, like one of those. But you get to draw a card again, I suppose, which is okay. And then 2 Telling Times, 1 colour and 1 blue, instant. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 into hand, 1 on top of library and 1 on bottom. This is, I think, pretty good, gives you good card choice. It's not card draw because you're essentially breaking even, you're only drawing 1 of those cards, but you get to look at the top 3 and kind of filter them however you want. So I think it's okay, especially at 2 and at instant speed. I think that's all right. And then we have a single Rain of Embers. This just does 1 damage to everything, which is fine, I suppose. Yeah, for 2, I can't complain. This is one I think that should have been one that you could replicate. That would be a really fun thing to replicate, doing increasing damage. I mean, then it's like kind of like an earthquake effect then. A single Electrolyze, really upset there's only 1 Electrolyze. This is like the Guild Power uncommon. So 1 colour, 1 blue, 1 red. Does 2 damage divided as you choose amongst any number of targets, and you draw a card. Really, really, really good card, which, of course, Salted Law, there's only 1 in the deck. But yeah, Electrolyze is really, really good. Just being able to potentially kill off 2 creatures and draw a card for only 3 mana is very good. 2 Izzet Boilerworks, it's the Guild Bounce land, we've seen those. And a single Nivix, Eerie of the Firemind, so this is the Guild Hall, gives you colourless mana, or you can play 2 colours, 1 blue, 1 red, tap, exile the top card of your library, and until your next turn you can play that card if it's an instant or sorcery. So I think this is kind of not exciting as such, but I think it's noteworthy, because I think this might be the first instance of like the impulse draw, which red normally gets these days, like where you exile cards off the top of your library and you can you can play them, but you only have like a limited amount of time to play them. Like if you don't, they get exiled. I mean, they're exiled anyway. But if you don't play them in that time frame, then you've lost your chance to them. So it's kind of like card draw, but not as such. I think this might be the first case of doing it. But yeah, I mean that's really expensive. I mean that ability to activate. So you're paying 4, you're exiling the top, and then like, oh well, you can cast it as an instant or sorcery, and just like I've just spent 4 mana to use the ability. What makes you think I'm gonna have yeah, I'm gonna have the mana now to actually use the ability, or to play the spell even. That's what I meant. So yeah, not too impressed by Nivik's Eerie the Firemind, but this is, I think this is the grandfather of all those abilities, mostly in red, that will come later. So what could have been? I think there's a lot wrong with this deck, honestly. Part of that I think is just due to a really underwhelming card pool. Like, I just think the replicate spells just aren't designed very well. So I think this could have, I mean, it could have been a lot simpler and just gone with kind of blue-red, just, spells which don't have the replicate gimmick, but then I guess, it's an Izzet deck, it's obviously trying to show off the guild keyword. Anyway, so Giga Drowse, I'm actually really surprised Giga Drowse isn't in here. So this is actually, I think, one of the better replicate spells because it's only 1 to cast and 1 to replicate, and you just tap a permanent. So you could just sink a load of blue mana into it and just like absolutely just tap down everything. Schism Motivate. Honestly, I like a lot of these Izzet cards just because of the names. They're really fun. That it shrinks one creature's power and increases another creature's power by 4, which is really good. Steam Core Weird. This I thought could have been here. It's a 1/3 for 4, which is like not great stats, but if you play it by casting red, it does 2 damage to anything when it comes in. Snapping Drake, I just thought Snapping Drake is just a 3/2 flyer, and I just think that's what the deck needs. I think it just needs a bit more meat in here, just in case like the burn spells aren't, because they're not great burn spells in here. It just needs a bit. It needs a bit of extra oomph, The same with the Viashino Fangtail. This is 4 mana for 3/3, and it taps to do 1 damage to anything. So you could swing with this, or you could ping with it. Just again gives the deck just a little bit of muscle, And then alternate rares. So Tybor and Lumia I think are okay. I think it should have just had Niv Mizzix, because Niv Mizzix is great. 2 colours, 2 blue, 2 red, 4/4 fly. Whenever you draw a card, he does 1 damage to a creature or player, and you tap, draw a card. Great card. Should have been in here. Tybor and Lumia are fine, but Niv Mizzix is the absolute boss. So yeah, he should have been in here, I think. And then maybe instead of Leyline of Lightning, Leyline of Lightning is fine, but Paraelectric Feedback, this might have been okay. So 4 mana and does damage to a spell's controller equal to the spell's converted mana cost. So it's not like it's not really a counter spell, it's like a counter burn, I suppose. They play a big spell, you do this, and like, I don't know, haha, take 6 damage because your spell was really expensive. Maybe. I don't know. So in summary, this one's actually a little disappointing, which is a shame because it is blue-red, which is one of my favourite colour combinations. But it's just let down by, I think, by the card pool available to it at the time, and just the fact that like the guild mechanic is not great, I don't think, or it wasn't too well designed. As I say, the future times we go back to Ravnica, I think the Izzet have a much better keyword. I think Overload is a great keyword, and I'll talk about that when we eventually get to it in however long that'll take. But yeah, kind of disappointing, honestly, and yeah, I don't know how this one would have played out of the box. I feel like it would have been maybe a bit of a frustrating experience, but that's just how it looks to me on paper. What are your opinions after seeing the deck? Did you own this deck and did you play it? Did you make any changes to it? If you have any thoughts or opinions, please put a comment below. I love reading people's comments and thoughts on these decks. But that's it. We're now done with Guildpact. So the next video we'll be moving on to Dissension, which is the last set of the original Ravnica block. So we'll start looking at those. So yeah, that'll be fun. But until then, thank you for watching and listening, and have a great day.